welcome. In a new turn of event, ex-Thailand Prime Minister Thaksin to face trial for royal insults. Russia to raise taxes on wealthy firms amid Kiev war costs. Haiti Transitional Council appoints Cornel as Prime Minister. Protests in Mexico City over Israel's Gaza war. An art project helps keep Australia's indigenous out of jail. Talking judicial matters, ex-Thailand Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, who returned home last year after 15 years in exile, will go on trial next month on charges of insulting the monarchy. On June 18th, 74-year-old Thaksin will be subpoenaed to appear in court to answer charges under Thailand's Lèse Majesty law, one of the strictest in the world. He also faces charges of violating the Computer Crime Act. Prayuth Pacharakul, a spokesman for Thailand's Attorney General, said Thaksin, a prominent telecommunications tycoon, was first elected Prime Minister in 2001, but was ousted 5 years later in a military coup amid mass protests from the urban middle class and disquiet over his policies among the pro-royalist, pro-military elites. His populist political movement continued to win elections over even after Thaksin went into exile, but was brought down in coups or court rulings amid relentless political upheaval. The newest allegations were made by the generals who seized power from Thaksin's sister Yingluck Shinawatra in 2014 and relate to an interview he gave to South Korean media following that year. Late August, Thaksin returned to Thailand after the Pheu Thai party headed by his daughter took power as part of coalition formed after establishment-aligned senators blocked the election-winning Move Forward party, which campaigned on reforms to the military and the monarchy from forming a government. Protesters, activists, politicians and political parties have all fallen foul of Thailand's royal defamation laws, which protect King Maha Vajiralongkorn and his close family, and have been used more widely since 2020 when young people began protests demanding unprecedented reform to the monarchy. Each charge carries a potential 15-year prison sentence. Thaksin's lawyer, Winyat Chamotri, said the billionaire will fight the charges. Critics say the law has been abused to suppress legitimate political debate. Over 270 people have been charged with lèse majesty since the protests began, according to Thai lawyers for human rights. Thaksin's return to Thailand on the very day Pheu Thai Srettha Thavisin became prime minister in alliance with a group of pro-military parties led many to conclude a deal had been done to cut his jail time on corruption-related charges. The king later reduced Thaksin's sentence from 8 years to 1, and he was freed on parole in February, having spent most of his 6 months in detention in hospital. Thaksin insists he has retired but has made numerous public appearances since his release. He has repeatedly pledged his loyalty to the crown. The Move Forward party is also facing court action over its commitment to amend the Lèse Majesty law, with the Constitutional Court due to decide whether to dissolve the party. Russia has announced plans to increase taxes on businesses and the wealthy as it struggles for additional revenue to fund its invasion of Ukraine. Government spending has surpassed revenue by tens of millions of dollars since Moscow ordered its troops into Ukraine in February 2022, as sanctions have cut off lucrative energy sales to Europe. On Tuesday, the Ministry of Finance proposed new tax thresholds for top earners and a hike in corporation tax. The amendment rather anticipated to raise almost 2.6 trillion rubles, that's 29 billion US dollars a year, reports said, citing Finance Ministry calculations. The changes are aimed at building a fair and balanced tax system. Minister of Finance Anton Siluanov said in a statement, adding that the extra funds will bolster Russia's economic well-being. The proposed amendments will come into force from 2025. Russian President Vladimir Putin suggested the country will increase taxes for companies and wealthy individuals shortly before he secured a fifth term in office in March, in a further step away from the flat rate of income tax that was the cornerstone of his economic policy during his first 2 decades in power. Income tax is presently 13% for the majority of Russians, with some higher earners paying a rate of 15%. The Finance Ministry said the amendments that the 15% rate will apply for annual incomes between 2.4 and 5 million rubles, that's 27,000 to 56,000 US dollars, while three higher brands of 18%, 20% and 22% further up the income ladder. The top rates will apply to earnings exceeding 50 million rubles, that's 560,000 US dollars. Silvanov said the changes will affect 2 million people and there will be rebates for families of 2 or more children. The corporate tax, meanwhile, will rise 25% from 20%, adding 1.6 trillion rubles, that's 18 billion US dollars, to the budget in 2025, and 11.1 trillion rubles, that's 125.3 billion US dollars by 2030, according to Interfax. The ministry said corporate tax rates could increase because the share of profitable companies in the economy was growing. The finance ministry says soldiers fighting in Ukraine will be offered exceptions from the tax regime. Russia ran a combined budget deficit of about 6.5 trillion rubles, that's 73 billion US dollars in 2022 and 2023. It has budgeted for a shortfall of 1.6 trillion rubles, 18 billion US dollars this year, equivalent to about 0.9% of gross domestic product, GDP. Now, a 9-member council in charge of overseeing Haiti's political transition has named politician Gary Conille as the Caribbean nation's next prime minister. The decision comes on Tuesday amid a period of chaos for the country, which has seen gangs seize control over much of the capital, Port-au-Prince. Conille is a familiar face in the role of prime minister. He served for 4 months from October 2011 to February 2012 and resigned after clashing with then President Michel Martelly. He now takes over for interim Prime Minister Michael Patrick Boisvord, who was appointed to the role after the previous Prime Minister Ariel Henry formally resigned in late April. But Henry's failure to call a vote to replace Moise has intensified tensions in the country. In January 2023, the last elected federal officials, 10 senators, saw their times expire. In the meantime, the country's gangs sought to fill the power vacuum, asserting power over upwards of 80% of Port-au-Prince, including roadways in and out of the city. The United Nations estimates over 362,000 Haitians have been displaced by the ensuing bloodshed. During the first 3 months of 2024 alone, gang violence has killed over 1,500 people and wounded hundreds more. Henry announced his decision to step down as Prime Minister in March amid international and domestic pressure to do so. He had recently traveled to Kenya to show up support for an international security mission to help bolster Haiti's police. But while Henry was abroad, gangs attacked key prisons and police stations as well as the capital's airport, leaving him stranded outside of the country. In the aftermath, a regional cooperation bloc known as the Caribbean Community, or CARICOM, negotiated the creation of a transitional council to restore Haiti's democracy. 9 members were chosen, 7 of whom will have voting powers. The council is set to be dissolved in 2026 after a new presidential election is held. Conille's appointment as Prime Minister came as the result of a 6-1 vote. Since 2023, he has served as the Latin America Regional Director for UNICEF, a United Nations agency that offers humanitarian aid to children. But confusion has trailed the process of choosing a new prime minister. On Israel-Gaza war in Mexico City, clashes have broken out as protesters rallied against the war in Gaza. On Tuesday, around 200 people joined the urgent action for Rafah demonstration outside the Israeli embassy. Confrontation with the police was packed as some protesters sought to break down barriers, stopping them from reaching the diplomatic mission. Protesters covered their faces and threw stones at riot police, obstructing their path to the complex in the city's Lomas de Chapultepec neighborhood. Police deployed tear gas and threw the stones hurled back at the crowd. The demonstration was caught following Sunday evening's Israeli attack on a displacement camp outside Rafah, which killed 45 people, according to Palestinian officials, after triggered an inferno. In Australia, more indigenous people are behind bars than ever before, making them the world's most imprisoned people. Despite making up 3.8% of the national population, Indigenous Australians make up 33% of the prison population and are 17 times more likely to be jailed than non-Indigenous people. The Australia's southeast state of Victoria, a group of artists is working to break the cycle. The Touch is a community-led organization that works with Indigenous inmates to teach artistic skills and reconnect prisoners with their cultural heritage. Inmates also generate income selling their work in galleries and to private collectors nationwide, with the money being saved in a trust ready for their release. According to Touch, the results have been astonishing. Inmates engaged with the program have a return to prison recidivism rate of 17% for First Nations prisoners compared with the national average of over 70%. What experts call the hyper-incarceration of Indigenous people in Australia is a legacy of colonization and its racism, as well as the successive government's emphasis on law and order, in particular the trauma of the stolen generations. The forced removal of Indigenous children from their families continues to reverberate. In the state of Victoria, where the Touch program operates, around half of all Indigenous people have been directly affected by the assimilation policies, which only ended in the 1970s. On more stories now, still back to judicial matters, highlights from Trump's hush money closing arguments. On Tuesday, prosecutors told jurors they've seen a mountain of evidence to prove that Donald Trump falsified business records in order to cover up a destroying story about an alleged affair at the end of 2016 election. Trump's attorneys told the jury that the prosecution's criminal case against the ex-president is wholly dependent on the testimony of Michael Cohen, the MVP of liars, who is out to get Trump, which narrative the jury believes could ultimately decide Trump's legal fate. The defense and prosecution gave their closing arguments in Trump's New York hush money trial, spending several hours late into the evening Tuesday offering. The jury opposed stories about the payment made to Stormy Daniels in October 2016 and the subsequent reimbursement to Cohen the following year. Judge Juan McCann on Wednesday will give the jury his instructions in the morning, and then jurors will start discussions with the historic and unprecedented trial and a pivotal moment in the 2024 presidential election hanging in the balance. Todd Blanche, defense attorney, was up first, and he spent much of his 2-hour closing argument attacking the credibility of Cohen, Trump's former fixer. He accused Cohen of lying directly to the jury. On top of the lies he was convicted of telling, Cohen lied so much. Blanche alleged that he should be considered the Tom Brady of lying, the GOAT, or the greatest liar of all time. Blanche focused on Cohen's claims about his phone call with Trump on October 24, 2016. Cohen testified that Trump bodyguard Keith Sheila put Trump on the phone so Cohen could tell him he was going forward with Daniels' payment. Blanche, during cross-examination, alleged Cohen with text messages he sent to Sheila around the same time as the call asking for help about a teenage punk star. Still ahead on the news, North Korea sends trash balloons to the south. North Korea has dropped at least 150 balloons carrying propaganda leaflets and rubbish in the south, triggering authorities to caution its residents to stay indoors. On Wednesday, South Korea's military also warned the public against touching the white balloons and the plastic bags attached to them because they contain filthy waste and trash. The balloons have been found in 8 of 9 provinces in South Korea and are now being analyzed by appropriate authorities. North and South Korea have both used balloons in their propaganda campaigns since the Korean War in the 1950s. The recent incident comes days after North Korea said it will react against the frequent scattering of leaflets and other rubbish in border areas by activists in the south. North Korea's Vice Minister of Defense Kim Kang II said in a statement on Sunday that mounds of waste paper and filth will soon be scattered over the border areas and the interior of the ROK, and it will directly experience how much effort is required to remove them. Republic of Korea, or ROK, is the official name of South Korea, while the North is called DPRK, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Residents living north of the South's capital Seoul and in the border region received text messages late on Tuesday from their provincial authorities asking them to refrain from outdoor activities. They were also asked to file a report at the nearest military base or police station if they spot an unidentified object. Footages show bags attached via string to white translucent balloons carrying toilet paper, dark soil and batteries, among other contents. Reports from South Korea said some of the falling balloons carried what appears to be feces, judging from its dark color and odor. South Korea's military condemned the act as a clear violation of international law. Coming now to Africa, South Africa's high-stakes election polls open. On Wednesday, South Africans started voting in elections seen as their country's most significant in 30 years and one that could put their young democracy in unknown territory. At stake is the three-decade dominance of the African National Congress Party, which led South Africa out of apartheid's brutal white minority rule in 1994. It is now the aim of a new generation of discontent in country of 62 million people, half of whom are estimated to be living in poverty. Africa's most advanced economy has some of the world's deepest socio-economic problems, including one of the worst unemployment rates at 32%. The persistent inequality with poverty and joblessness disproportionately affecting the black majority threatens to unseat the party that sought to end it by bringing down apartheid under the slogan of a better life for all. After winning 6 successive national elections, many polls have the ANC support at less than 50% ahead of this one, an unprecedented drop. It might lose its majority in parliament for the first time, although it's widely expected to hold the most seats. Support has been declining. The ANC won 57.5% of the vote in the last national election in 2019, its worst result to date. Cyril Ramaphosa, South Africa's president and leader of the ANC, has promised to do better. The ANC has asked for more time and patience. Any change in the ANC's hold in power could be monumental for South Africa. If it does lose its majority, the ANC will likely face the prospect of having to form a coalition with others to stay in government and keep Ramaphosa as president. An ANC having to go govern has never happened before. The election will be held on one day across South Africa's 9 provinces, with closely 28 million registered to vote at 23,000 polling stations. Final results are expected by Sunday. Ramaphosa was due to cast his vote in the morning in Johannesburg township of Soweto, where he was born and which was once the epicenter of the resistance to apartheid. The opposition to the ANC in this election is fierce but fragmented. The two biggest opposition parties, the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters, are not predicted to increase their vote by anything near enough to overtake the ANC. Now we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, I'll bring you more stories. Please do stay with us. Welcome back. Now, Zuma, Nigeria. Tinubu administration marks 1 year with major reform, says minister. According to a report released on Tuesday by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, the Tinubu administration has reported substantial progress in its first year. The report, titled 1 Year of the Tinubu Administration, Building a Safer, Stronger and Prosperous Nigeria, highlighted the achievements driven by 8-point renewed hope agenda. In a statement signed by the minister, Idris said amid tenacious economic challenges and high unemployment rates, the administration's bold reforms had begun to stabilize the economy. Idris stated that to lessen the effects of these economic adjustments on the population, the administration has implemented numerous supportive measures. He said security has also been a primary focus of Tinubu's administration. The minister added that President Tinubu declared a state of emergency and restructured the Ministry of Agriculture into the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. Furthermore, he stated that energy and natural resource management have seen advances, mainly in the Niger Delta, where enhanced security measures have added oil production and stabilized natural gas output, stating that the healthcare and education sectors have received substantial attention under the Renewed Hope agenda, adding that expansion of primary health centers and the introduction of the student loans access to higher education act are key initiatives aimed at improving access to essential services and opportunities for all Nigerians. And finally on the news, strike likely as wage talks end in deadlock. Yesterday, signs emerged that the federal government and organized labor are heading for a showdown over a minimum wage as the sixth meeting of the Tripartite Committee on the new National Minimum Wage NNFW ended in another stalemate. Organized labor's deliberation team for the second time in 2 weeks, however, walked out of the committee meeting after the federal government increased its offer to 60,000 naira from 57,000 naira it offered on Wednesday, May 22nd. Organized labor, represented by the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) and its Trade Union Congress of Nigeria (TUC) counterpart, had on May 15th walked out of the Tripartite Committee meeting after the government offered 48,000 naira and an organized private sector (OPS) offered 54,000 naira against the 615,000 naira minimum wage demand by the labor. Recall that at last week's meeting, the government and the private sector offered 57,000 naira minimum wage demand, while labor reduced its demand from 615,000 naira to 497,000 naira. At the resumed meeting yesterday, however, the government and the OPS added 3,000 naira to last week's offers of 57,000 naira, thereby increasing the offers to 60,000 naira. Labour instantly followed the footsteps of the government and OPS to lessen its demand by 3,000 naira, bringing it down to 494,000 naira before walking out. Labour had given government up to May 31st to finish discussions to avoid industrial disharmony. President of NLC, Joe Ajaero, while confirming the development, said yesterday the government is not serious with the negotiation. They had just added 3,000 naira to their offer last week. The painful aspect of it is that the government team is not explaining its offer. We equally removed 3,000 naira from our demand and left. A recap of major stories says ex-Thailand Prime Minister Thaksin to face trial for royal insult. Russia to raise taxes on wealthy firms amid Kiev war costs. Haiti Transitional Council appoints Cornel as Prime Minister. Protests in Mexico City over Israel's Gaza war. And Art Project helps keep Australia's indigenous out of jail. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.